Good evening and welcome to another episode of Apolitically Incorrect Guyana. My name is KIAN Jabbour and as usual I am your host this evening. First of all, sorry I was not here last week. I took a rather interesting trip with some friends. We actually ended up going to Brazil and spending some time. It was not coincidentally, but planned. It was Carnival. So we took a little, vacation with the guys and it was a very, very cultural experience. And I took back a lot of very interesting things from the trip. I love traveling off the bat, and I try to take it as much as I possibly can. I think it's the best way to learn. And I had a very interesting experience spending some time there, and I think there's a lot of stuff that can relate or should relate to Guyana, as Brazil are our neighbors. So we'll get into that in a bit, but for now I'm actually here to discuss a topic that's been burning over the last couple of weeks here in Guyana, and it's regards to professionals within Guyana. Professionals meaning anybody that is qualified in a certain area, whether through education or experience for that matter. What we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and this is a topic that's been absolutely burning. I'm sorry I wasn't here last week for it, but the teachers have been striking. All the public school teachers in the country have been striking. I think more than 7,000, I think was the number, which is equates to almost half of the teachers in the country, in the public school system, down tools and decided, they are no longer going to come to work because at the end of the day, the salaries that they're being paid are not enough. We had an interesting back and forth between the government, because obviously it's a state-run system. The government in which stated they have met a lot of the criteria that the union has put out, except obviously one being the salary increase. We know the 6.5% was put out at the end of last year. Arguments have been made, obviously, that 6.5% doesn't even come close to matching with the rise in cost of living. So the teachers' salaries that they are claiming have not been able to meet living standard have decided, you know what, we are no longer working because at the end of the day, we have to look out for our families and we have to be able to survive. And that's what the teachers ended up putting down tools. We're going to have a very interesting conversation because I think first and foremost off the bat, I'm going to explain that the teachers' salaries themselves, I think, I know it has been floating around on social media, but the teachers' salaries themselves, after taxes, listen to that carefully, and understand that a lot of the information that you've been seeing on social media are before taxes. After taxes, in which you're taking out almost 40% of that teacher's salary, indicate that within 5 years, the first 5 years of that teacher's employment in the public school system, they are taking home less than $150,000. 150,000 Guyana dollars is what a teacher is making, is what a teacher is carrying home within the first 5 years of their employment. Now, I know that every Guyanese, every single one living in Guyana right now can attest that no one can live on 150,000 Guyana dollars a month. All right? Because that's what these teachers are carrying home. Right? Don't look at the gross salary because that's not their money. That goes to PAYE, that goes to NIS, that goes to VAT, etc. So, and various deductibles. So let's be honest here. You are not getting any type of quality long-term teachers at $150,000 a month. All right? So what you find is that over 60 to 70% of these teachers within the first 5 years quit. They move on because obviously they can't survive. Now, this is what the conversation is going to double back onto, because what it is as teaching is a profession. And what I'd like to do is I'd not just like to hone in on the teachers yet, but understand the entire industry of professionals working in Guyana and why there is such a brain drain. So just so everybody is very familiar in why I say there is a brain drain, because Guyana right now is still, as of 2022, because we have not had the most updated numbers yet, as of 2022, right? Bear in mind, that's just 1 year ago because we just started 2024. As of 2022, Guyana is still on the top 10 countries in the world for emigration. Emigration meaning the amount of people leaving per capita. So the statistic lies at about 6.5 people to every 1,000 people. So every 1,000 people in Guyana, 6.5 of them leave every year. All right, and that's one of the highest in the world. All right, there's no doubt anybody can attest to this, and I think this conversation is going to be very focused on the professionals themselves, is that we can fully understand why professionals are leaving Guyana in the numbers they are. So let's start with, I'm going to start with, before I get into the contentious oil industry, I'm going to start with nurses. We all know the demand for nurses around the world. These nurses are leaving by the droves. They have not gone on strike yet, solely based on the fact that they can leave because they're so sought after in other countries around the world, Canada, England, America, etc. They're getting work permits easily. The governments of those countries are actively looking for them and coming to them and offering them better packages. They go over there, they get better housing, they get better salaries, they get better standards of living, and at the end of the day, they work for a couple months, maybe a year or two, and they can bring their families over. So the question is, why wouldn't these nurses leave? And they are, okay? I bring out the statistic all the time. Just in January alone, over 21 nurses in Georgetown Public Hospital resigned. Over 21 nurses. Now, that doesn't sound, what do you mean? That's only 21 nurses. The system is already 600 nurses short. And if in 1 month it's only 21, now imagine at the end of the year what we're going to look like. All right? Stop with the nonsense about training nurses, and we have, we're bringing in nurses, because that argument there is another argument I'm very, very passionate about. This government is willing to bring in nurses from Cuba and other countries, paying them transportation, paying them housing, paying them salaries to stay here, which all amounts to more than they are paying the local nurses. So the question is, why aren't they just paying the nurses the better salaries rather than bringing in these foreign nurses and giving them more money? And the only logical explanation I can come up with is that the foreign nurses can't vote. And what this government has said in all their little circles that I'm going to call out openly now is that the public service does not vote for us. This government, through all their actions, clearly show that they have no interest in the public service. All the public servants in this country. Why? And the only logical explanation, because you've heard it around and around, is that the public servants of Guyana do not vote for the PPP. So they have no interest in helping them. Because at the end of the day, we are sitting here watching the nurses leave, watching the teachers on strike, just for more money to survive. And everyone can come up with an excuse not to pay them, except why they should have been paid or why they should be paid more. Now, let's start with the two basic facts that I want anyone to ever please argue. I want you to name one nurse, bring them forward, or one teacher in Guyana that gets into the profession of teaching or nursing in order to get rich. That's insulting to those people. Okay? These are professionals. They work in these industries because they love it. They have a passion for it. Nobody gets into nursing and teaching because they think in the back of their mind at some point they're going to get rich. That's bullshit. So when you see a teacher strike or a nurse leave, it's because they are left with their backs against the wall. Okay? They don't want to leave those children. They don't want to leave their patients, but they've realized that if we just continue doing this, we are going to fail. We are going to sink as people. So they're on the road and they're just asking for a livable wage. And we can all argue, we can all sit down here and accept that $150,000 take home in the first 5 years is not enough money. And this is what the nurses and the teachers are being paid. Now, I'm sorry, I had a chance. I went out there because, in my position that I am, I like to get out as much as I can to talk to the people that are doing these things. And I got a chance to go on. And it really made me sick that the government, the PPP government, painted this as a political rally, as a political strike. Just, yes, a political person runs the union, but none of those teachers out there are there because they are APNU supporters and they're trying to bring down the government. They're not teaching because they support APNU. They're teaching because this is what they love doing and they care about the children. So when you stood out there, all they've done is anger these teachers. When you look at all the lives all over Facebook and so on, and you hear the individual people, all they're asking for is a livable wage. All they're asking for is to be able to take care of their families. Now, let me get into the conversation now of young professionals and professionals for that matter. Now, Guyana has just well, not just, but recently, within the last couple of years, has entered the oil industry. And honestly, I think we can all attest to this. The oil industry has saved Guyana. Now, I want us to all, for 2 seconds, think of what Guyana would be like in this day and age after COVID, with costs of living around the world going up, shipping expenses going up, importations going up. What position we would have been in economically if it wasn't for oil. Now, that's just one side of it, the economic impact of the income being earned. Now, what I want to more specifically talk about is the professionals working in the oil industry. Now, let me start with a very basic fundamental fact. We have heard this government talk all day and all night about the local content legislation that they have put forward. And they are doing this to protect Guyanese and ensure that Guyanese are safe and reaping the benefits from the oil industry. Now, you know what is not included in the local content legislation? Protection for the professionals working in the oil industry. And I'm talking about the medical professionals. I'm talking about the engineers in particular. All right. And then the various other accountants and other types of professions within the oil industry that's required, because it's across the board. Now, I've been very fortunate within the last couple of years to have somebody in my life that is a young female professional in the oil industry. And if there's one thing I've been able to do is really watch what the trials and tribulations are of these young engineers, and more particularly a female engineer. And it's something I'd like to discuss a little bit deeper in this conversation. So bear with me. I know I'm sitting down here as a male, as a businessman, and I may not be the best equipped, but I think it's a conversation that's not being had. And I think with the platform that I have and the role that I play in the political realm, I think it's at least an attempt that needs to be made to have some sort of representation for these young female professionals in this country. It's a very interesting conversation because before I talk about the female aspect, let's talk about engineers and professionals in total. Now, what we have watched is expats coming in, whether from Trinidad or Suriname or Mexico or America or Canada or England or all over the world, and doing the same jobs as our professionals here locally. And for the amount of years that they've been working in the oil industry, 3, 4, 5+ years, the locals are still not being paid equivalent to what these expats are being paid. And I'm not even talking salary. Let's talk about housing expenses. Let's talk about travel. Let's talk about the fact that they leave every 6 weeks and come back. And this, again, is not bashing the foreigners that are coming in to do the work. But let's talk a little bit more about why the locals are not being given even remotely close to these types of benefits and doing the same work as these engineers, as these foreign professionals. Now, we have to discuss, I watched it over and over and over. You watch a job open up, a position open up in these companies, in these, large companies, these foreign oil companies, and you watch them bring in a profession, you watch them bring in a foreigner to do a job that a local is absolutely capable of doing after they've been working with this company for 5, 6, 7, 10 years and still not getting the advancement. Now, that's just on a general basis. Now, let's talk a little bit about the females working in these industries, all right? Now, I'm focusing on these females, and you'll understand why, because I'd like to bring it all back to the fact that mainly females are teachers and nurses in this country, all right? And those are professionals, just like the female engineers. Now, what's interesting to talk about is I had a chance to discuss this over and over because obviously as a male, I would not have experienced a lot of it. But what exactly are females experiencing within the oil industries and within these various corporate worlds? Now, let's start with the basics. The statistics are shown around the world. Females are paid less than males. Okay? Argue it however you want. All of you out there that can even try to bat an eye at that, it's not true. Females are paid less than males around the world for doing the same job. There's no question about it. The statistics show it all over the planet. All right? Now, let's talk a little bit more about what females have to deal with within the industry. And I've made some notes here, so please bear with me because this is a very technical conversation that I'm trying to do my best to put forward. Now, let's start with living expenses, right? I off the bat, I have a daughter. She is 12 years old. And I can tell you right now that there is no way anyone can argue that the living expenses of a female is less than a male. It is so much more expensive, okay? Just based on, again, on their menstrual cycle, for example, they have expenses on that males don't. And then they have lots of other, details about their lives that they are required to ensure that they are always upkept. When it comes to the professional environment, they have to make sure their hair is done. They have to make sure, nails are done and they look professional. Their wardrobes are much more elaborate. Not when I say elaborate, much more technical than males. I mean, we just put on a shirt and some jeans and some shoes, and we wear the same thing every day for months on end. But this is not the same for females, and we have to accept that. So right off the bat, we know that the female living expenses are more than males, right? Let's just throw on a 10% more, just to give it. So let's start off that. They're paid less, but they have to spend more. So we already know that, all right? Now, let's talk about single women, for example, because many women in this country, and we're watching the teachers leave, we're watching the doctors leave, we're watching the nurses leave, we're watching the engineers leave. And we wonder why this is. Because you sit down there and let's say you have the argument, but they're being paid lots of money in the oil industry. Why are they not comfortable with that? Well, let's talk about what lots of money is. So let's say they are paid $300,000 to $500,000. Let's say we have a professional engineer that's paid $300,000 to $500,000 Guyana dollars a month, and you're sitting here going, "Well, that's a lot of money. They can definitely survive on that money." Now let's break this down in the eyes of a woman. So now you've decided you're an engineer. You're working 9 to 5, 7 days, 6 days a week, and the truth of the matter is, you don't have time for social life. You don't have time for, everything else. The minute you come home, you got to do your laundry like everyone else. You got to take care of your household, etc. Now, let's say you decided, well, as a young woman, you want to buy a house. Now, right off the bat, if you have to find $2 to $3 million to put down on a house, cash, just let's say you're going through the government, and then you want to build a house on that. So let's say that's another 15 to 20 million. When you do those expenses, everybody knows right now, you're looking at in and around $160,000 a month, just in home expenses, just in, for your mortgage and land and loan repayment. So right off the bat, you're almost half of your salary in which you want to own your own home, half of your salary has to go towards that. Now, I don't know if anybody knows this, but I'm sure the foreigners can attest. Please feel free to comment. The fact of the matter is, in America, in Canada, you're not going to get a loan payment unless it is 30% or less of your salary. You want to know why? Because it's not sustainable if it isn't. Because when you take into your living expenses, when you take in your transportation, you have to buy a car. When you take into your health needs, all of these things put into place, you're not going to be able to afford the mortgage. So banks are not going to give you the loan. Here, we've developed this horrific cycle of having people pay most of their salaries into these house payments and all of a sudden not being able to find themselves on a sinking ship, not being able to afford their living expenses. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So you have now a woman that has decided to buy a home. She's now paying, let's say, 40% of her salary for argument's sake. All right? She's now paying 40% of her salary just to have a basic home. All right? By the way, that 40% of salary, and this is a trick that I want you guys to really please understand what's going on the ground. Your house doesn't get built overnight. So that $2 million and that $160,000 in mortgage is being paid while your house is being built. All that time, you still need to rent a house or hopefully live in with your parents, but that's not everybody's reality. We have to look at worst case scenario. You still have to rent a house. So you still have the whole living expenses structure while you're trying to build a house. Just trying to explain it, what it's like on the basic ground. All right. So now you have women that are being paid less. They have more living expenses, as we just said, and now they have to build a house and buy and pay for it. Now, right off the bat, let's discuss the fact that your salary is not increasing anytime soon. It's not a rapid increase that you're looking at. So as a woman, you have to understand why the appeal to leave Guyana is so high, right? This is just the professional side of it. I'm breaking it down into two sectors. That's just the professional side. Now, just to sink into the professional side a little bit more, you're now still dealing with sexual harassment in the workplace. You're dealing with unsafe work environments. You're dealing with unsanitary work environments, all right? You're dealing with a sexist work environment here in Guyana, because you know when the guys all clique up, you know when they go out for beers and you know they bond together, all of a sudden you as a female are now overlooked, and these are realities in the workplace. And I know everybody has lots of comments. I'm going to go through them in a bit, but at the end of the day, this is the reality of what women are dealing with in the workplace. All right. And they have to do whatever they can to fit in. And I'm sure the women that are in it are not about to make excuses and sit down and complain about it. They're going to do it. They're going to buckle down and they're going to get it done. But the conversation is, why are professionals leaving Guyana? And these are the reason. Because all of a sudden, a woman sits down there and looks around and says, I'm not being paid enough for this. I don't even know what the future holds with this company because of the work environment that I'm in. And we understand what the oil industries are. We understand what all of these environments are like. So the fact of the matter is, guess what? The best idea is, I might as well leave. I'm a professional, I got qualifications. I'm sure I could find a job somewhere else in the world. I'm leaving. And then all of a sudden, Guyana is now left without a professional. Guyana takes the hit. All of us end up feeling that, because that's somebody that could have contributed to society. That's somebody that can have built a sustainable family and grown our population and grown Guyana as a nation, contributed back. But no, this person has just decided, I'm out, I'm leaving. Now, these are such interesting aspects of the professional environment. Now, let's talk a little bit about the social environment that women are dealing with. Now, when I explain to you what owning a house is and the expenses associated with it are, you very quickly realize that the system is designed for a double income. Two people now have to be earning an income in order to have at least a comfortable life. Drive a car, own a home, be able to, take some time off when they want, maybe buy groceries and go to dinners and stuff like that, live a comfortable life. So all of a sudden, a young female independent engineer in the oil industry earning $400,000, $500,000 is sitting there going, well, now I have to, now I'm dependent on somebody to come into my life in order to make my life comfortable. Now, let's talk about the social dynamic. We already know what it's like in this society when it comes to fathers. I'm a father, okay? I see it all the time with my daughter's friends, all right? And all over the country, all the time. Fathers are the most non-existent creatures in this country. So now you're telling a woman to depend on a man that is already known and has already grown up in a society in which he has decided, I don't need to look after my child. I could just go start another family, right? So immediately in the back of a woman's mind is, I'm not giving or putting my eggs in the basket of a man and depending on him. So again, one more reason, why not leave to greener pastures where I can go and get a better life and live independently? Now let's take the next step. What about having children? All right? For all the women out there that want to have children, you sit down there and you look at your daily expenses. Well, Jesus, I'm already spending half my salary on mortgage. I have to buy a car. I got car payment for $50,000. I got to buy groceries for myself for another $70,000 a month. I got to pay electricity. I got to pay insurance. I got to pay lights, water. I got to pay all these things through and through. Spending money because every now and again I like to go out. You know, it's just, now I have to bring a child into this world. I can't do that. That's not fair to the child. Plus, I am working nonstop. You have to keep that in mind. These people are working nonstop every day of the week. This is not fair. This is not a level playing field for the females and the males in the corporate working environment, professional environment. It's not. All right. So now they decide, oh, well, obviously I want children, you know, for those that do, but they look around again and they say, well, I can't trust the males in Guyana because obviously they're known to not participate in children's lives, much less their own lives. Then you decide, okay, well, I'm going to try and do it on my own. And you can't even raise a child by yourself. How are you paying for daycare? Who's picking up this child? And then all of a sudden, now you're working the role of mom and dad with a child. As a young female professional engineer working in the oil industry, you're now overlooked for promotions because you have to leave for PTA meetings. Your child gets sick. You have to do school pickups and drop-offs. All of a sudden, you're not committed as the males are. So once again, females find themselves on the back foot. And guess what? They leave. They pick themselves up and leave. So now we're in a society here in which the females have decided that this is not worth it for me. Unless I find miraculously a husband that's worth any you know, time or effort. And that's just so unlikely that they might as well leave and go and make a name for themselves or make a life for themselves elsewhere. So we have to understand these aspects. Now let's twist this back to the teachers and the nurses. Think about the lives that they have. I'm talking about a professional engineer in the oil industry earning $500,000 and still will leave this country because it's not worth it. They cannot have a comfortable life. Now let's talk about the teachers and the nurses that are being paid $150,000. You cannot expect these people not to protest. This is crazy. These people are our teachers. I mean this to no offense to the engineers or the accountants out there or the lawyers or anyone else, but these are nurses and teachers. They are by far some of the most important people in our society. They look after our children. Both of them. When we get sick, the nurses have to take care of us. How do you think all of us have gotten to this place without teachers? No, they've all played pivotal roles in our lives. The most popular people, the most important people are the teachers in our society, and we look at it every day. All the time you walk around, if any of us do, we remember all our teachers from primary school and high school, right? That's just what it is. That's the impact they've had on our lives. And now we're asking them, we're telling them, no, get back to work or we're going to deduct more salary. What are we saying here? What are we talking about? This is not fair, much less the fact that most nurses and teachers are female. So they're dealing with all that stuff I spoke about before and have less salary. Guys, what's happening in our society here? This is not right. They have to be paid more. They have to be given more benefits. They have to be able to sustain themselves and their children without having a male necessary or a double income necessary in their lives. That is not right. This is not how Guyanese should be treated. Now, let me expand a little bit on taxpayers' money here in Guyana. Let's say, but now I'm gonna get a little bit more technical here. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about our economy and options that we have and solutions to our problems. Now let's start with the basics, and this is the fundamental. Right now, the personal income tax that has been paid to into the $1.1 trillion budget for 2024. I'm going to give you guys 2 seconds to think about it. Now, the question is, how much money of the $1.1 trillion budget for 2024 has been put there, has been inserted into that budget through personal income tax? So VAT, PAYE, all the other various expenses, duties on vehicles, etc., etc. How much money from that coffer has contributed to the 1.1 trillion on a percentage basis? How much do you think? How much do you think Guyanese taxpayers contributed to the budget? Okay, I've given you 2 seconds. The answer is 8%. Not 9, not 7, 8%. Less than 10. Less than 10% of that $1.1 trillion came from taxpayers. So that always begs the question, what are we paying such high taxes for? If the money is irrelevant, what are we paying such high taxes for? Why are we paying over 100% duties on 4-door pickups or Prados or vehicles that if I can afford it, I should have the opportunity to purchase it? Why is the government still charging us that money on those vehicles? This is illogical, especially the fact that less than 10% of those big luxury vehicles, the Prados and the 4-door Hiluxes and the Raptors and this and that, less than 10% of those vehicles actually pay duties, just so everybody knows. Okay? So that's even less. It's a number that's insignificant. Most of them, 90% of the vehicles that you see on the road, the luxury vehicles, the 4-doors and so on, and the big SUVs, they're duty free. So the question that you ask yourself is, if you don't need the money, why are you charging us then? Why not just drop the duties? Why not just drop it to 30, 20%? You'll still make money, more people will pay it, more people will buy the vehicles. So you'll actually end up earning more money. But what we're quickly realizing is that this is not about the money. This is not about earning the money. The government doesn't need the money. They have oil money now, right? They have grants from all over the world. People handing them money. So if we're not paying, if taxpayers are not contributing, then why are we even bothering paying these high taxes? Now let's talk about PAYE, for example, something that these same professionals need to pay. Now we're getting into the realm of solution here. Let's say you don't want to pay the teachers more money. Let's say you're worried that the teachers, that if you pay the teachers more, it won't be sustainable. How about just dropping taxes then? How about just lowering PAYE to, 10%? Because it's not contributing to the coffers. It's only 8% of the budget, right? And that's a very small fraction. PAYE is still a small fraction of that 8%. So why not just scratch it, bring it all the way down to 10%? Because they clearly don't need the money. And all of a sudden, those same teachers, instead of you raising their salaries, are going to get more money back in their pockets, because they get to take home more of it. So that $150,000 that I was speaking about earlier goes all the way up to Jesus, 200,000? Immediately $50,000 more a month in their pockets. Why are we paying such high VAT? Why has VAT not been cut in half already? Even drop it to 10%. Imagine the money that is going back into the people's pockets, cash in their hand that they can spend, that they can live a better life. Why not? But you see, everybody has all the excuses under the sun. Now, let me tell you another little solution just to help the naysayers with this. Well, that's not sustainable. Oil is, and I like this argument, oil is volatile. Oil is not sustainable. I love it. I agree with it. Oil is a sliding scale. Oil prices can change. All of a sudden, Guyana not making as much money anymore. No problem, understood. Now, I'm very, very fortunate to have spent some time in a country in which has been oil rich. And what was amazing about this, and let me tell you what they did, is they put it on a sliding scale. So what they have done, having been in the oil industry for so many years, is they know the price fluctuates. And what they have done is they have said, when the price of oil is up here, we are going to lower your taxes to down here. But when the oil price drops, we are going to lower your raise your taxes back to compensate. And this can be done on a sliding scale. Now think about that for a second. If you want to say, wait a second, what if we lower all these taxes like Kian is saying, and then the oil price drops? Well, put it on a sliding scale. As the oil price drops, you continue to raise back the taxes. Citizens will understand. Give us the break when we're making the money. And then when we're not making the money, then Guyanese will understand it, guys. Obviously, due to the circumstances, we have to raise taxes a little bit more. And we already know the threshold that's necessary because we're paying it right now. So we know it can't go more than 40% for PAYE and NIS and VAT. And then we know VAT can stay at 14%. So bring it down to 7%, bring PAYE down to 20%. And then, excuse me, when oil starts to drop, you bring it back up. Okay, guys, we're going to bring back PAYE to 25%, and we're going to bring VAT back to 10%. Okay, great. It's balancing out. Oil price rises again, you get to drop it back again. This is not hard to understand. Okay? So you're beginning to see that there are solutions to these problems. Now, I cannot for the life of me understand why this government is still at this point in time taxing us the way they are, not paying the professionals what they should need to survive, but yet coming up with every excuse under the sun. Now let's talk about a little basic economics here. I love this conversation. Oh my gosh, if you raise their salaries, inflation. What do you mean inflation? They're being paid so low already that even if you bring their salaries up to $200,000, you think that extra $50,000 for nurses and teachers are going to change the whole economy? You think all of a sudden this $50,000 extra, these teachers are going to just start becoming glutton and eating everything in the country, and then we have no food, and then all the prices rise? Like, shut up. It's such a stupid argument. Right now, we are already importing 10 times more than we can consume as a nation, as citizens. So we are way below anything that can even remotely hamper inflation. So stop with the nonsense, all right? If you want to do that, if you want that argument, well, guess what your job is as a government? Make sure we are producing more. Ensure the business and the farms can produce more. But is that happening? No. We are just being left right here stuck. Go and check the numbers of the rice exports. Go and check the numbers of any exports for that matter, fish, anything. It's all declined. So how are you, so maybe if something is causing inflation, it's the fact that everything outside of the oil economy is plummeting. Think about that for a second. Guys, this is not hard to understand. This is not rocket science, okay? I'm not sitting here trying to pretend that, you know, one solution will fix everything. We understand that this is multi-tiered. But guys, there are solutions because it's done around the world. All right? And at the end of the day, we have to admit that our citizens are getting second-class treatment, from our engineers in our oil industry all the way down to our teachers. This is not right. Guyanese deserve better. we've reached a point where we've watched this budget and everybody's had a chance to analyze it. And what we've quickly realized again is that most of the brunt of this money is going to infrastructure. Now, let me not be the bearer of bad news here. I completely believe that infrastructure is necessary. I think infrastructure being done intelligently is a little bit more necessary in Guyana, but paving 2 roads and charging $100 million, the same road that got the broke up road underneath and that is going to broke up in another 6 months, is not sustainable development. All right, throwing 2-3 inches of asphalt over an already broken road with nothing at the side to ensure that the road doesn't collapse into the gutter is not sustainable development. All right. We have to, as citizens, start holding our government more accountable for this. It's unacceptable. All right. When I hear that all brunt of the budget is going to infrastructure, then the fact of the matter is 5 years later, we are now 4 years into the government, just to throw that little fact out. We are now 4 years into this government. Show me the massive infrastructure that you're all referring to or praising day in and day out. All right. Give me a break. Paving over a couple roads, building a Harpy Eagle Road and a Antietam and a thing. I like it, build it. But I'm sorry, 3 new roads in 4 years is not enough. Okay, not for the amount of money that taxpayers are being charged through the budget, because that money could go to us, could go to human capital development. All right. This is getting ridiculous now. We know the corruption that's existing. We know the kickbacks involved in all these contracts. So we know where a majority of the money for these infrastructure projects are going. All right. I welcome the Harbour Bridge. Unfortunately, it's not going to be done by 2025, as we know. Gas to Shore project, riddled with corruption. That project by itself is something, you know, just as a citizen, I am so worried about. We talk about, you know, just to give you guys an understanding, as somebody that pays very close attention to this. In the beginning, when it was, I think it was 900 million was the sum to build it, which was the NGL, which was the pipeline and the power plant. Now, that cost has gone up to, I think we're around 4 or 5 billion US dollars now. It was 900 million US. I think it was even a little less than that when it started, when they proposed it. We are at almost 5 billion US dollars now. Now, let's get even more technical. That money is not being funded by any international organization. America has already told the IDB, we are not funding it. All right. So now the government has decided majority of it is going to come out of taxpayers' pockets, which is the budget money. And then the other set of it, they're going to borrow from a commercial entity. I think it's Exim Bank or something is what they're looking at. And I'm sorry. When you told us that that project was going to cost 900 million, you told us that it was going to lower our electricity by 50%. Now let's be realistic here, because everybody can do basic math. Now that it is 4+ billion US dollars, there is no way you can cut electricity by 50%, because all those loans need to be repaid. Okay? So when you see banks like that look at a project and say, yes, we'll lend you the money, but you can only charge X amount because we have to get back our investment. That's how it works, as we know how all banks work. So what we need to do is stop lying and get realistic with these projects and what's going on. Stop painting the newsroom headlines and the DPI and the Chronicle with these wonderful things like everything is perfect and peachy. When we're watching our teachers strike, right? When we're watching our nurses leave, when we're watching our young professionals, specifically female professionals, leave these shores, we are still one of the highest in the world for emigration, people leaving. That's what the argument is. All right, guys, on that note, I'm going to cut it a little short because I know it is Friday night and we have a lot more going on that I'd like to touch on. My next show, I'm very serious about this. I have not even had a chance yet to discuss the Madhya fire COI. Now that situation I will never let die. I will never stop speaking about that situation, because what has happened there is the worst tragedy to ever hit this country. And that COI, I'm sorry, it is the lowest of the low. It's despicable. Okay? And we are going to discuss it a little bit more, because that's 20 of our children died. All right? And what we have quickly realized is nothing is being done about it. Nothing has changed anywhere in this country to protect the rest of our children. All we've watched is blame being passed back and forth. Who's responsible? Who's not responsible? All right? But nobody has taken responsibility, and nothing has been done to fix it. There's one thing I do have to say before I close off, and this is probably my most important statement to anybody in this country, any voters, anybody, you know, that's paying attention to what's going on in this country and listening to the political back and forth, because it's about to get a lot louder coming on to campaign season. I am tired of hearing APNU and AFC talk about who did more. Because at the end of the day, the little bit that they try to claim fame for and they try to praise themselves for, what all of us as Guyanese know is that it is not enough. Stop talking about the little you've done and understand that it means nothing to Guyanese if it is not enough to progress our lives and make our country better and our children's futures better. We demand more. And I'm telling everyone right now, the only way to solve this problem between APNU and PPP is to vote anywhere except PPP and PNC. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care what third party you vote for. Vote anybody except for PPP and PNC and level that playing field out, balance the power out, spread the power around. Even if it's 10 parties in parliament, even better. So now all 10 parties have to come together and make decisions for Guyanese, which means everybody will be included in the decision-making process. This whole one-side winner takes all, whereas either PPP or PNC get majority, has to end. Okay, we've learned what not to do as third parties. We have learned from what AFC did. We completely agree. Wrong. That's why we are doing it better now. We have to learn from our mistakes. And we have to understand that in order to get real change, constitutional reform, better lives for the Guyanese people, we need to make sure that not one group is making all the decisions for their people and their people only. Everybody needs to be part of the decision-making process. All right? On that note, guys, thank you for joining me. We just a few minutes short, but nonetheless, I appreciate everybody. I hope you guys can look back at this show. Hopefully I gave you some good information, and we can jar some change and people can start to understand a little bit more. I'm happy to see what the teachers are doing. I honestly, at the end of the day, I'll tell you straight, I hope that more public servants get on board. I hope that parents get on board and support these teachers, because they deserve more, because it's our children that they are looking after. All right, guys, on that note, thank you for joining me here on a beautiful Friday. Please be safe on the roads, and join me back here next Friday on Apolitically Incorrect. My name is Kian Jabour. Thank you for having me. Take care.